All right. This is usually on a Friday we go and speak to Jack just after noon, but because tomorrow's Anzac Day on both sides of the Tasman, I have to say, we are escalating her into the Thursday because we don't want to miss out on her insight, particularly at this exciting time in Australian history. In our letter from Australia, and Jaqui Lane joins us now. Jack, it is an exciting time. Are you going to any Anzac Day services tomorrow?
Yeah, I actually am going to head down to one in our local community. I'm a member of a local community association committee. So another committee member and I are going down to Double Bay where there's a memorial to be part of the Anzac service there.
Okay. Um, Interestingly, there is a bit of a concern here, not a big one, but people are aware of it, that the Palestinian and Gaza issue might suddenly intrude upon the incredibly respectful ceremonies of Anzac Day. Do you have that concern over there at the moment?
Certainly hasn't been raised anywhere that I'm aware of. Um, I suspect that probably won't happen. I think people are more focused on the election or being on holiday, quite frankly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean,
Um,
yeah.
yeah,
No, fair enough.
so certainly there's nothing I've seen or heard on the media here that's a particular concern this year.
You're having lots of crazy stuff happen. As I've
Yeah.
seen reported in the Australian media during the election, the sort of fringe stuff, protesters bursting into meetings and anonymous pamphlets being distributed and all that sort of stuff. Is it any worse this election in your estimation than previous years, or has it gone up a notch?
Yeah, I think it's gone up a notch actually. So my little electorate here of Wentworth, where we have Allegra Spender, and Roe Knox, who's a Liberal, and Allegra's an independent. 50,000 pamphlets, anti-Allegra were just dropped into letterboxes last week here. Call flutes being pulled down from telegraph poles or defaced. So a lot more of that seems to be happening, not just here. There was a Meet the Candidates meeting in Melbourne yesterday afternoon where, people, right wingers, gate crashed it and there's a bit of a fracas. So I think there's a bit more heated and tactical stuff going on this time around.
But I mean, they are fringes at the end of the day. I'm interested. You talk about Allegra Spender, who is in your election. She's one of the teal independents who eviscerated the Liberals in inner city Wellington and Sydney and Melbourne at the last election,
Yep.
and who are genuinely held at the moment to perhaps hold the balance of power after this coming election. Does that still look to be the case? I think that was the case the last time we were talking.
Yeah, look, and I do have to declare that I'm an Allegra supporter. So your listeners need to know that. So yeah, Allegra's got in last election. Roe Knox, who's the Liberal candidate, is running a good campaign as well. There's quiet confidence that Allegra will get back in, but it's by no means a simple or easy contest in this electorate, which I think is a good thing. But yeah, Allegra is very much of that group who came in with disaffected Liberal voters in the last couple of elections, and she's been a very good local member, but I think the Liberals are doing a good job at contesting this seat and a number of others as well.
Yeah, she's an interesting person, isn't she? Because I think her dad and her granddad, is that right, were both Liberal members of Parliament or politicians as well?
Yeah, her father was John Spender, and her mother was Carla Zampatti, the fashion designer.
Right. And her grandfather,
So
Sir Percy Spender, he was a Liberal MP as
correct,
well, and under Robert Menzies.
correct, correct. So yeah, comes from a very strong liberal background. Um, but has stood as an independent and was never planning, I must say, to go into politics. But when I think the Climate 200 Teal campaign started off, they obviously identified her. So yeah, she wasn't in kind of wasn't following in grandfather's footsteps for many years. She was in business and a consultant. So, but a good pick, in my view.
Yeah, no, okay. But you see, she's a very good example of this problem that the Liberals have got, isn't it? In the sense that
Totally.
she's a sort of liberal, a liberal, a small
Yeah.
L, big L. Um, and so on sort of liberal issues, and inner city Wellington, it could be inner city Wellington, it could be inner city Auckland, couldn't it really? Um, where we're relatively upmarket, wealthy, upper middle class folk, are liberals by inclination, despite being well heeled, and usually well educated. Is that the sort of kind of are all the teals of that type?
Not really. I mean, Wentworth is a very wealthy suburb, tends to skew older, but very wealthy. And in other inner city, I think Melbourne, Sydney, it's more the Greens that are driving it because there's younger people and apartments in the inner cities. You wouldn't call Wentworth as an electorate inner city. So, and I think that's where the Teal campaign um, is more was initially driven around action on climate change and stuff like that. And whilst that's certainly part of Allegra's thing, the inner city young urban voter would be potentially a green voter rather than a teal. And your teals here tend to be sort of not inner city, but quite close and typically wealthier, older suburbs because they're the only ones who can afford to live here, quite frankly.
Mm, mm. Okay. Now, about a month ago, when we were talking about this, perhaps a little longer, you were saying that Dutton had a really good chance of leading the Liberals, and that for this being a one-term Labor government. Um, what I'm reading, but you tell me if I'm right or if I'm wrong, is that those hopes are receding somewhat.
Yeah, look, he's on the latest kind of opinion polls that's come out. Labor's edging up, and edging up is the appropriate description. And the Libs are kind of static or going backwards a bit. He hasn't really performed that well in the election debates that he's had. I mean, they're all both pretty ordinary, quite frankly. Um, the Libs and Dutton have made a couple of policy backflips, so you get the feeling that that there's just they're kind of grasping at straws. So like yesterday, they having said that they wouldn't change the EV car rebate, they've now come out and said they would. They're doing some major kind of changes in their policies. So you very much get the impression that there's no consistency. So it's very reactive. Um, so it's the campaign's not going well. I would suggest for the Libs. That said, Labor, cost of living is such an issue for Labor, and they're running a very negative campaign around everything will go up under the Liberals, but the reality is everything's gone up under Labor. So the electorate, I think, is very sceptical about all of that. I think the rise of the independents and the third party, as we've talked about,
Yeah.
it'll roughly end up being a third, a third, a third.
Well, that would be, so you're expecting the independents, or you're hoping that the independents will improve their presence in Canberra.
Yeah, look, I think they probably will. I think, as I said earlier, I think the Libs are, doing, are contesting some of those teal seats that were previous Liberal, but Labor's pretty on the nose as well. And this whole Labor thing of throwing money at things, people are just exhausted by it and not convinced.
Yeah, well, I'm
And
watching a lot
and
of that at the moment. Gosh, every day is, well, both sides.
I
This
know.
is a classic bribery election, isn't it? A classic pork barrel.
Totally, totally, and the reality is the electorate kind of, is thinking, well, where's the money going to come from to pay for it all? So there's a deep distrust about what's being said, number one, and no confidence that either party really is going to be able to manage, and just getting more debt's not going to solve this.